Thank you, Cecily.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Actually, the material that features in chapter 8 tonight is very similar to your presentation, actually. There's a similarity in the theme, you know.
Great.
Before we launch into chapter 8, I'd like to open the possibility for people. Is there anything kind of overhanging from last week? We had a good discussion on karma in particular. Is there anything that's been kind of bothering anybody for the week? Maybe to jolt your memories, what I might do is there was a little occurrence that got a lot of airplay a few years ago in the English soccer press of all things. It illustrates actually that quite a lot of people in the modern world have opinions on karma, and it's always kind of couched as a kind of a retribution or a punishment. It seems to be the feeling that people have about karma, you know, and that's not exactly the case, you know, not the case at all, really. The event I'm speaking of was that there was a group of people who use wheelchairs, and they find the soccer stadiums, the big ones, awkward with steps and the like, and terraces and all that, you know. So they put in a request to the manager of the event that they might be facilitated and allowed watch the match from the sideline. And the manager said no. He said that he wouldn't consent to that. And somebody said, but the people that are in wheelchairs and they find it difficult to manage all those steps and all of the things that you find in football stadiums. And he said, well, if they're in wheelchairs, he said, that's their karma, he said. Which elicited a certain uproar from the commentary, you know, of it. And one of the things was that people felt absolutely that it was unreasonable to think that anything that you would do in your past could reflect itself in the position you find yourself today. So they weren't buying that element of it, you know. But it was also a misunderstanding, you see, of karma, because karma is not a retribution or a punishment. Now, if I find myself with negative circumstances and suffering in my life, it is because I committed negative or unskillful things in the past. But the point to remember is that if in the moment of committing those actions, I knew what the results for me would be, unless I'm a bit deranged, I wouldn't do the action. Because I mean, who wants to lay down suffering for themselves, really, you know? So, as let's say, the takeaway from that is that negative karma is a result of not having the full picture, of ignorance, really, rather than evil. If I have negative circumstances and things I don't want in my life, it's because I acted unskillfully in the past. It doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. And one of the implications for that then is that nobody in their right mind would ever harm another. Why wouldn't you harm another? It's not a trick question.
Because you're also harming yourself.
Yeah.
Does that equate, Morris, to life's an echo chamber?
I don't quite understand that what goes wrong comes around, yeah?
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It actually is, but you see, if you were, how shall I put this now? If you were to get over exercise about trying to do the right thing all the time, it could drive you kind of crazy. The thing to focus on, preferably before I act, is on my motivation. That's the key to managing this one. Like, before I act, what is my motivation? Am I trying to improve the situation, or am I trying to get my own back on somebody, or you know the menu here, right? But the way you manage your karma is to always make sure that your motivation is of, well, let's just say kindness.
I would add in, and why not? It's not hard to do, is it?
That's a yes and no answer, Martin. It should be yes, but sometimes it's no. Because we're on a path.
Hmm.
You know,
But yeah,
we're
well, it's
trying.
time.
We can't always be, you know, it's back to the circumstances. You know, we know what's right, but just, yeah.
That's actually the point in listening to these teachings. You see, that's the point. Is just to reinforce what you already know, but it's just to reinforce it and to give it confidence in. I'm hoping Morris is going to reappear here.
What about if you are ignorant of circumstances and you are creating harm and you don't even realize you're doing it?
Yeah.
So you're very ignorant about it.
Yeah, that's the reality. Like when we look at ourselves, all those times we did hurtful things, as Morris was saying, like we had no idea really what we were doing, we were just going in some kind of reactive kind of thing. So whether knowingly or not, when you walk in front of a bus, there is consequences.
I find it helpful to think of motivation as you're saying, because I don't always find it helpful to categorize experience in terms of positive and negative, because there's sort of opportunities in every experience, and I just find that a very helpful way of dealing with my life anyway.
Are you with us again, Morris?
Oh yeah, I am, and I'm enjoying the conversation. Sorry about that. The thing just shut. I got a nice blue screen, but I'm back.
Oh,
Shall we move on to chapter 8? Would that be the thing to do? How about that? The top of the second page, I thought, was a good place. Despite my anxiety, I felt ready to continue on my adventure. Now he's in this train station and he's finding it quite oppressive, and there's crowds and pigeons and rats, and it's not the type of world that he's used to. A kind of a quite a nice monastic life with nice food and all those things, you know. But he kind of confesses, you see, that he always imagined that he could step out into the world, make the world his home, based on some kind of internal mental ease, which would kind of work in any context. And you know, he spoke of 5-star hotels or the slums in Brazil or whatever, you know. And if you think back, that's exactly the hypothesis that he set out to test. You know, would his teachings, the teachings and the practice and the trainings that he's had since he was very young, would it actually deliver when the situation was challenging? You know, and there's a lovely little passage here, and it reminds me of what Cecily was saying there earlier on. You know. To be at home anywhere means not to get hooked by sights, sounds, smells that attract and repel. It means letting go of the impulse to pick and choose, allowing the objects that I saw and smelled and heard to just be, without going towards them, going out, or without withdrawing from them. Just staying with the clarity of the awareness and allowing all the phenomena around me, whatever they might be, to drift by like clouds. That's describing the discipline, the practice of meditation, right? But he's attempting to try it in a challenging live situation as well.
It sounds wonderful, Morris. Why don't we do it?
On like now or ever.
To be at home everywhere meant not getting hooked by sight sounds. Just staying with the clarity of the awareness and allowing all phenomena around me, whatever they might be, to drift by like clouds. Why don't we do that? Sounds good, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, I'm not even sure why I don't do it, but I know I don't. But why doesn't anybody do it? Or maybe you all do it now. What do we do instead of that? Is maybe a question. Instead of letting the clouds just drift by, there's a lovely phrase here on the next page, I think, that a lot of effort in the course of an ordinary life, and he speaks about his friends that are in their mid-30s and they're in careers and this and that, ordinary people in the world, and he points to the truth that a lot of effort goes into creating a landing pad. You get the sense of a safe place, like that the world is doing your bidding. But he says you can do that, you know, and arrive on a landing pad, a nice place, with the wheels of desire and dissatisfaction keep spinning. Can anybody relate with the reality of that? You know, that you could put all this effort into trying to make samsara work.
Well, I can confess. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say probably that's the trap that most of us fall into all the time, striving for a nicer samsara instead of, you know, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. Instead of really seeing things as they are, we just want a nice, comfortable samsara. Unless we make the effort to think about it and, you know, see that that's not a viable solution.
But like the question I know that Martin often asks is, has it ever worked?
No, it seems to work maybe for short times,
Yes.
for short periods.
Oh,
But
yes.
then
Yeah.
something goes wrong,
Yeah.
and it all comes crashing down fairly quick.
But when you kind of look at it and become mindful of it, the surprising thing is that we think it goes along nice and smoothly, and then it dips into a bit of a disaster, But it's actually the other way around. Once in a while, we get a bit of relief. But
Yeah, we kind of miss that relief, don't we? Because we're so busy struggling, thinking. Like, I think, did you mention looking for enlightenment, Maria? Like, there's one of the poems I sent out was because joy and sorrow must finally unite, and small heartbeat of sparrow be heard above jet roar, I will sing, not of tomorrow's impossible paradise, but of what now radiates. We kind of miss what's happening now. Isn't it like that, Morris? Isn't it like we miss the relief
well,
or something?
that is true, you see, but
Yeah.
he points, like, there's a point, like, this paragraph is a bit depressing, really, because that's not accidental. There's a certain bringing us to our senses element here, that we need to get a little bit disenchanted with the normal pursuits. There's nothing wrong with them in and of themselves, but they just don't deliver. And where's it gone here now? It said that on the heels of expectation, disappointment follows. Right? And it gets it gets worse, see? Because after this disappointment, then recriminations, it's somebody else's fault. Okay? And that can actually often befall, I might as well say, meditators, you see, because the clouds begin to clear and you begin to see the unsatisfactory, the hollow nature of samsara, the stuff that captured you beforehand has lost its grip. So you can become a little bit disconcerted, and there might be a tendency to strike out a little bit in frustration. But now that you know about that, you'll never again do it, right? All right, that's good. Now he's looking at himself, and he says, okay, his own routine back in the monastery, it never brought him to this level of dissatisfaction or frustration with his life. But he says, it's a different story now, because I'm here in this train station, and it's not at all easy, So he asked the question, what is really making me uptight and uneasy? Like, what's really wrong? What is the problem, you see? And I took the liberty to jump ahead, in case anybody's interested, because I had remembered something that really struck me. It's on page 128. And I'll read out the quote. It's from this book, page 128, right? So he's now in the station and he's wondering why is he feeling dreadful. And he says this, he says, without any training, I might have concluded that the railway station was the problem, not mine. Without training, he said, I might have concluded that the railway station was the problem, not my mind. That's rarely a starting point that we start from when we set out about addressing things. We always look outwards and the problem is out there. Or will anybody own up to that?
It's quite a revelation, isn't it? because if it's your mind where the difficulty is, you can do something about that. To actually sort out the railway station might take a bit of effort, but if it's your mind where the problem lies, you know, then isn't that interesting?
Like when that's the tenor of the discussion, you can be pretty sure you're amongst Buddhists, you know. Right? And actually, when a lot of people discover that about the Dharma, they say, "Oh no, you know, maybe the Catholics are a better go," you know. It makes each one of us kind of responsible, or gives us the control.
That's right. That's right.
That's the point, you know. And what I kind of like then about the way the chapter develops, right, is that I thought this was really nice bit of writing. He says, throughout the day we ask, this is each one of us now, right? Where are my kids? You know, or where are the keys? Where's my phone? We tend not to ask, where is my mind?
That was the one I was going to say, Morris.
Really? I'm glad I got around to it eventually. But just think about it for a moment, you know. Would your life be different if every so often you said, Jesus, what am I doing, you know? I wouldn't take, it's not a big ceremony, you know, and you don't even have to sit down to do it, right? Where is my mind? What am I thinking of, you know?
I love that piece as well where he says to just to notice. You don't have to do anything about it. Just to notice.
Yes.
I thought that was really cool.
Actually, I was very I remembered a little bit from The Joy of Living, which was one of the previous books that Mingyur Rinpoche wrote. Some of you have probably come across it, you know. And on that exact issue, Martin, there's a beautiful bit of wisdom in relation to just what the power of just noticing. And maybe I'll read it out as best I can, you know. Because if you don't try to stop whatever is going on in your mind, but merely observe it, eventually you will begin to feel a tremendous sense of relaxation, a vast sense of openness within your mind, which is in fact your natural mind, the naturally unperturbed background against which various thoughts come and go. It's an interesting proposal, that, because you see, it's really interesting because you are your own laboratory on this one. Does that make sense? Like, that's a bit cryptic, but you don't have to believe that at all. But just get a little bit used to just noticing what's going on in my mind. No need to clean it up or alter it or change it. That's the risk, you see, is that you get very sensitive to what's going on in your mind, and one will become absolutely neurotic. That's not what's being suggested at all. You know, if you're not encountering a sense of ease, it's a sign that you're doing something wrong in terms of this practice. Are we to go at about 8 o'clock, Cecily? Is that it?
Yeah, Morris, yeah.
Anybody like to make a little comment on that proposal, or that really simple and really profound practice?
Just one little thing there, Morris, that didn't sit so well with me, you know.
Okay.
Is that, you know, if you notice that you are feeling dis-ease, if you notice you're upset, that's all that's been suggested.
Yes.
You don't have to relax it even.
Yes.
Just to notice it. Just what you said. Look, we have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to say is that we're inclined to think that there's a right way, and this is what I must do. You know, all that's been talked about here is just simply noticing, and part of that is actually when you notice, you accept it as like that, and when you do that, that creates the ground for self-liberation. Just noticing, owning up.
Yeah.
It's like
It's a mistake. It's a mistake to engage with it and try and fix it. That's actually a mistake.
because when you notice and you engage and try and fix it, that's your expectation. And it was mentioned earlier that expectation is a problem. So I can just really relate with that, Martin, about just noticing is all you need to do. You don't need to try and change something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was one other little thing I wanted to add in as well. I didn't want to be taking it over, but there's one little thing I want to add in as well. You know, so when we were talking about samsara and seeking a better samsara, the world does not need any more Puritans. Right? Yes, have a good life. Eat good food. Drink in moderation. But not so focused on it. Not so focused on finding something that will make your life easier. By all means, make your life easier and enjoy life. This is not about some kind of monastic setup. It's just not to be obsessed with samsara. And that's also part of what's been talked about here. That when you find something that isn't to your satisfaction, right, you might just notice that. You might just notice it and see that you're dissatisfied with it, and not engage. Do you see? Not to be driven. Then you can come back and fix it. But to say, I don't know if you get this point, to recognize you're dissatisfied, to accept you're dissatisfied, and not to engage, it dissolves. But then you can go and fix it. Then you can, if it's important. If it's not important. Like one of the things I suggest sometimes, like I always say, it's a really good idea to practice meditation outdoors, And something you might do, just really zany Martin suggestion. You're sitting outside, it starts to rain. Right? What would you normally do? You'd normally go inside. Here's the zany suggestion. Just sit there for a little while. Feel the rain. Notice it. Notice how you're feeling. Then go in, change your clothes, have a shower. Do you see? It's not being driven by what's happening to you.
maybe driven or conditioned is a word that might expose as well, you know. That our responses are normally conditioned by circumstances.
And it's interesting, you know, that, sorry, I'm off now.
You can accept a bit. It's possibly easier for us to talk about rain here, Martin, because it doesn't even wet the pavement sometimes. But sometimes it can come down in major torrents too. Yeah.
But I was just using that as an example. You might actually do something zany just to see, just to be free.
Yeah.
Not all the time.
Driven, fixing, making it right, making it the way you want it to be.
Wasn't there some series or something called Mad Men? You know, ad men or something, you know, advertisers, you know, which basically works on dissatisfaction.
Hey.
Maybe we can.
Well, if you'd like to add, Morris, to the book club, we'll move on after that then.
Well, it's in the book, you know, the proposal about, you've encountered it before, it's not really new, about the idea of just, rather than getting engaged and try to fix, just observe.
Mm.
Okay, then. We can come back, we're kind of in the middle of chapter 8, and we have a few more pages, and we'll relax our way through it. How's that?
Great.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Morris. That's